Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock News and Politics show. We're on to a little politics. I'd like to welcome Nicholas Oliver. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You've been here before. We're here to talk about legislation in the waning days of the session here. Now, with the Rhode Island Partnership for Home Care, there is legislation that still could be around there up at the State House pertaining to potentially unionizing the home health care industry. So talk with us about this fight.
Yeah, so this is a bill in which the organization which I represent, the Rhode Island Partnership for Home Care, opposes. The partnership represents licensed home care and hospice agencies. They're licensed by the Rhode Island Department of Health to provide quality health care services in the home. And now there is this bill that is being proposed by a union coalition, SEIU, which represents paraprofessionals that deliver health care in facility-based settings, now want to get into the home care space. But how they're doing it is by putting in a bill that mandates that the state of Rhode Island develops a separate system than currently licensed agencies to go out and have a paraprofessional workforce, or those that aren't trained, those that don't have a college degree, to go out and provide the very same set of services in which my home care agencies use CNAs or certified nurse assistants to go out and provide personal care attendant services and activities of daily living support for homebound patients that really cannot do these services themselves. They cannot feed themselves, bathe themselves, toilet themselves. They need that assistance. So the Department of Health has a program and a specific workforce that they license that go out and provide these services, and that there's oversight from the Department of Health to make sure that your homebound loved one gets the quality care that they need and is not subjected to fraud, waste, abuse, or neglect. This other workforce that's proposed has none of those protections and are using it as a way to be able to create more membership into this union at the taxpayer's expense. And we disagree with it entirely.
And so you've got basically a checklist that you have that will provide for you after the fact as well. It's basically what your membership does and comparing it to what this legislation would request and require of, as you said, this sort of parallel membership. You know, when you first started looking through this, what was your reaction when you saw this?
It was really shocked. Rhode Island is very different than the handful of other states that have this, what they call independent provider model. They utilize these independent providers when you have family members that want to deliver care to their loved ones and supplement that income loss by not working full-time or walking away from their job to care for their elder mom or dad or whoever.
Okay.
But here, this is different. We have something called a personal choice waiver program where the state allows you to do that in those very specific examples. Otherwise, you have freedom of choice of 4 dozen agencies that are willing to come in and provide their workforce to deliver this care with all of that oversight. And you said you're going to provide that checklist. It is a scrutinous process to make sure that we have the right person that's licensed by your state Department of Health to then be able to go and deliver these services, certified and licensed, to say, yes, they deliver quality. And then there's oversight for the agency on top of which, and then there's program integrity auditing in which the state conducts on a regular basis to make sure that each of those visits occur in the home and that all of the items on their checklist, their to-dos, their task list that talks about delivering the specific services that each individual patient needs are met. None of this is in this bill. So there's no quality care, there's no direct oversight, there is no licensure. It's taking advantage of a model and putting it to where you're taking folks right off of the street. It says 3 hours of training on the bill versus 120 hours plus 12 hours a year in continuing ed to do the exact same services in which there is a professional board of licensure at the health department that oversees CNAs. So you're infringing on someone's license, disincentivizing them from being in that line of work to then what? Have higher rates of fraud, waste, and plus high rates of abuse and neglect in these other states that have this model. This is very scary for Rhode Island that it's invested so much to make sure that our homebound elders are safe.
So you alluded to the other states and the models that they have there and potentially why they're looking at this here. Besides those family individuals, who would care for someone in their own family, which you mentioned there's already existing financial opportunities to assist them in that manner. How big is that population? Is that an argument that they've used extensively for this, or is this much broader than just that?
Yeah, there's last numbers that I've received from the state are about 500 patients that utilize this personal care choice waiver.
Okay.
So it's not a big population. There are a little over 3,000 homebound elders, adults with disabilities, and children with exceptional disabilities that utilize home care services through the Medicaid program, either through traditional Medicaid and through neighborhood health plan, which in part of the budget that passed the House, that will soon pass the Senate, eliminates that Medicaid only or neighborhood unity program and moves everything back to the state.
Okay.
So SEIU and their coalition are capitalizing on a moment where there is so many problems with the EOHHS infrastructure, and that has been well reported in the media by you and your colleagues in this media market, about the problems that we have with UHIP. I dare say that four-letter word in this state, but the problems with UHIP, the problems with the administration and oversight, and the chaotic atmosphere that is within the EOHHS leadership. The governor has commented on it, the speaker has commented on it, but instead of saying, hey, let's pause, let's look at our workforce for long-term services and supports, and then figure out if there are problems with quality, if there's a problems with recruitment that's beyond low reimbursement rates, which, by the way, the House in their budget, and again the Senate to soon pass it, are passing significant rate increases because they've recognized that they need to invest in home care. So let's let that happen first, and then study it, and then revisit the issue. Even the governor has said, by the way, that we do need to study this issue first, and announced a couple of weeks ago in Woonsocket that she's starting to develop a Reinventing Medicaid workforce work group that's meeting 1 week from now to study things just as this. So the legislature should wait, not pass this bill this session, let the governor study this through her study commission, and then let's go back and revisit this in a future year.
And tell us the status of it up at the Assembly, Nicholas. Where does it currently stand?
So the Senate passed an amended version of the bill that was promoted by Secretary Eric Bean. Secretary Bean is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, where all of the problems that we're talking about the UHIP infrastructure, lies in his responsibility, and God bless him, he's got a lot to work with. So the Senate passed theirs. So the Senate version is in the House Labor Committee. But the House's version, which is the original version of SEIU's bill, is in House Finance. So you have two versions of the bill on the same concept in two different House committees. So there's even some problems there as to which committee should even look at this issue, which just shows that the legislature is not prepared to give another set of responsibilities without oversight to EOHHS at a time where they're not prepared to facilitate the current programs in which they're operating.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to come in and talk about this issue. I know that advocates have been speaking out throughout Rhode Island on it, Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity.
Absolutely.
The Gatsby Project talking about this particular piece of legislation. We are in the waning days of the session. So many moving pieces, up there last night for the POSOX, but healthcare and more hanging in the balance here. I appreciate your taking the time to come in and give folks a glimpse as to what's taking place. We'll continue to follow this issue. I'm sure we'll continue to talk with you as well, Nicholas Oliver.
Thanks, Kate, for the opportunity.
Thank you for taking the time to come in. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Okay.